They found my father's signature on the documents that declared me mentally unfit. I was 17 when they locked me away, 28 when I walked back into his vineyard. He thought I'd forgotten. He thought wrong. Some betrayals age like wine. They only get stronger with time. Before we dive deeper into this, if you've ever felt betrayed by family, you'll want to hear this story. Hit that like button because this gets darker than you can imagine, and trust me, by the end, you'll understand why some secrets should never stay buried. My name is Elena Moretti, and this is the story of how my father tried to erase me from existence. But to understand why I'm standing outside these gates today, you need to know what he did to me 11 years ago. I grew up believing I was loved. I grew up thinking my father, Vincent Moretti, saw me as his legacy. Our family owned one of the most prestigious vineyard estates in Northern California, producing wines that sold for thousands of dollars per bottle. My earliest memories are of walking through endless rows of grapevines with my father, his hand wrapped around mine, teaching me how to test the soil, how to read the weather, how to taste the difference between a good year and a legendary one. He called me his little prodigy. He promised me that one day half of this empire would be mine. My mother died when I was 15. Cancer, they said. It happened fast, too fast. One day she was laughing at breakfast. The next month she could barely lift her head from the pillow. I remember holding her hand in that hospital room, watching the light fade from her eyes. My father stood by the window, his back to us, shoulders shaking. I thought he was crying. Now I wonder if he was counting down the days until his freedom. 8 months later, he married Lorraine, a woman I'd never heard him mention before the funeral, a woman who smiled at me with perfect white teeth and eyes like chips of ice. She came with a son, Damien, who was 3 years younger than me. My father called it a fresh start. He said our family needed healing, but I felt something else, something wrong, like the air before a thunderstorm. I tried to accept her, I really did, but Lorraine had a way of watching me when she thought I wasn't looking. She'd touch my father's arm and whisper things I couldn't hear. She'd suggest I was stressed, that I needed rest, that perhaps I was struggling with my mother's death more than anyone realized. Little comments, little seeds planted in fertile soil. On my 17th birthday, everything changed. My father threw me a celebration at the estate, inviting business partners and family friends. My grandmother Catherine, who controlled the family trust, gave me her mother's pearl necklace. She told me I was the future of the Moretti name. I felt invincible that night, surrounded by people who claimed to love me. 2 weeks later, I couldn't sleep. I went down to my father's study looking for a book, and I found a folder on his desk. Inside were legal documents, fresh and crisp, his new will. I read it once, then twice, my hands shaking so hard the papers rattled. He was leaving everything to Damien, the vineyards, the estate, the business, all of it. My name appeared once in a single line. Elena Moretti is to receive a one-time payment of $50,000 upon my death and no further claim to the Moretti holdings. I felt like I'd been gutted. All those promises, all those years of training me, teaching me, making me believe I mattered, lies. I took the folder and went to find him. It was late, almost midnight, and he was in the wine cellar doing inventory. The air was cool and damp, heavy with the scent of oak and fermentation. I threw the folder at his feet. "Explain this," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. He picked up the papers, glanced at them, and set them calmly on a barrel. "You weren't supposed to see that yet." "Yet? When was I supposed to see it? After you died? After I had no power to fight it?" "Elena, you're being dramatic. This is a business decision. Damien is better suited." "Damien doesn't know a Merlot from a Malbec. I've worked beside you since I was 6 years old." His face hardened. "This is my decision. You need to respect it." "Does grandmother Catherine know? Because I'm betting she doesn't. I'm betting if I tell her what you're planning, she'll pull your access to the trust so fast." He grabbed my wrist, hard. "You won't say a word to Catherine." I yanked away from him. "Watch me." I turned and ran. I heard him call after me, but I didn't stop. I went straight to my room, locked the door, and started packing. I'd drive to my grandmother's house that night. She'd know what to do. She'd protect me. I never made it out of that house. The next morning, I woke to the sound of footsteps and voices. Before I could sit up, my bedroom door crashed open. Police officers, paramedics, a woman in a white coat with a clipboard, and behind them all, my father and Lorraine. She had a bandage on her temple and tears streaming down her face. "That's her," Lorraine sobbed. "She attacked me last night. She said she was going to kill us all." I stared at her, confused, my mind still foggy with sleep. "What are you talking about?" The woman in the white coat approached my bed. "Elena, I'm Dr. Whitmore. Your father called us because he's concerned about your mental health. He says you've been having episodes, violent outbursts. Last night, you attacked your stepmother with a wine bottle." "That's insane! I was in my room all night." My father stepped forward, his face a mask of concern that I now know was pure theater. "Sweetheart, you're not well. You haven't been well since your mother died. We found medications in your bathroom, pills you've been hoarding. The doctors think you've been experiencing psychotic breaks." "What pills? What are you talking about?" They showed me bottles with my name on them, antipsychotics, mood stabilizers, prescriptions I'd never seen, from doctors I'd never visited. My medical records all falsified, Lorraine's injury photographed and documented, witnesses, staff members who swore they'd seen me acting erratically for months. Every piece of evidence perfectly constructed, perfectly placed. I fought. God, I fought. I screamed and kicked and begged, but they held me down and injected something into my arm. The last thing I saw before the world went dark was my father's face. He wasn't sad. He wasn't conflicted. He looked relieved. I woke up in Switzerland in a private psychiatric facility called Bergman Institute. They told me I'd be there until I was stabilized. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into months. They kept me heavily medicated, so sedated that some days I couldn't remember my own name. I tried to call my grandmother, but they said she knew where I was. They said she'd agreed with my father's decision. They said she didn't want to speak to me until I was better. Every letter I wrote was lost. Every phone call request denied. I started to believe what they told me, that I was broken, that I was dangerous, that my family had abandoned me because I was too damaged to love. 5 years passed like that. 5 years of white walls and medication schedules and group therapy sessions where I was the only patient who insisted she didn't belong there. By year 6, I'd stopped insisting. I'd stopped fighting. I was a ghost of the girl who'd walked through vineyards with her father, who dreamed of carrying on a legacy. Then Dr. Hoffman arrived. He was older, maybe 60, with kind eyes and a careful way of speaking. He reviewed my case file and asked to meet with me privately. We sat in his office, and he looked at me for a long moment before speaking. "Elena, I've read your admission documents multiple times, and something doesn't add up." I barely heard him through the fog of medication. "What do you mean?" "The signatures are real, the medical reports are detailed, but the dates are wrong. Physical evidence was documented before the incident allegedly occurred. Lab results were filed before blood was supposedly drawn. Someone constructed this very carefully, but they made mistakes, small ones, but mistakes nonetheless." For the first time in years, something sparked in my chest. "Are you saying I shouldn't be here?" "I'm saying someone wanted you here very badly, badly enough to commit fraud, badly enough to pay a lot of people to look the other way." He leaned forward. I'm also saying that your father has been embezzling from your grandmother's trust for years. I have a friend who works in international finance. When I mentioned the Moretti name, he told me there's been an investigation building. Your father's been using money that doesn't belong to him. I felt like I was waking from a coma. Why are you telling me this? His face changed, grew sad. Because my daughter was also destroyed by powerful men covering up their crimes. I couldn't save her, but maybe I can save you. Over the next 5 years, Dr. Hoffman became my lifeline. He slowly reduced my medications, letting my mind clear. He smuggled in books, law textbooks, business journals, psychology studies. He helped me copy documents from my file, record testimonies from staff members who'd seen irregularities for months. He taught me to be patient, to be strategic, to think 10 steps ahead. In that sterile facility, I transformed myself from victim to weapon. By year 10, I knew everything about my father's business that I could learn from inside those walls. I knew he was drowning in debt. I knew he'd been selling counterfeit vintages to desperate collectors. I knew his empire was a house of cards waiting for one strong wind. Dr. Hoffman helped me make contact with people on the outside, lawyers who specialized in false imprisonment, investigators who could trace financial crimes, even a master vinter in France named Nikolai, who agreed to mentor me once I was free. On my 28th birthday, exactly 11 years after they took me, I walked out of Bergman Institute a free woman. The facility couldn't legally hold me anymore. Hoffman had ensured every document was in order. I took a train to France, where Nikolai was waiting. For 6 months, I worked in his vineyard, learning techniques my father had never taught me. I learned how to detect fraud in wine chemistry, how to trace provenance, how to spot a fake vintage from across a room. I learned the business my father thought he'd stolen from me. And I learned something else. My grandmother, Catherine, was still alive, still running the family trust, still believing her son had sent me abroad for treatment and that I'd chosen not to come home. She didn't know the truth. Nobody did. My father had spent 11 years maintaining the perfect lie. I decided to return for the annual Moretti Estate Gala. It was the biggest event of the year, where my father would announce Damien as his sole heir in front of everyone who mattered in the wine industry. I wanted to see his face when his past walked through the door. The night of the gala, I stood outside those gates, the same ones I'd seen the day they dragged me away. I was different now, stronger, harder. I walked through those gates wearing a black dress and carrying a leather folder full of evidence that would destroy everything my father had built on my grave. The ballroom was exactly as I remembered. Crystal chandeliers, walls lined with our most expensive vintages, tables draped in white linen. I moved through the crowd like a shadow, listening to conversations, watching my father work the room. He looked older, grayer, but still commanding, still convinced of his own power. I approached a group of investors and introduced myself as an international wine fraud investigator. I mentioned some irregularities I'd noticed in certain Moretti vintages. I watched the concern spread across their faces. Then I felt eyes on me. I turned, and there he was, my father, staring at me like he'd seen a ghost. Because he had. Recognition hit him in stages: confusion, disbelief, horror, rage. He crossed the room in seconds, grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the wine cellar, the same cellar where I'd confronted him 11 years ago, history repeating itself in the worst way. He slammed the door behind us. "What the hell are you doing here?" "Hello, Father. Did you miss me?" His face twisted. "You're supposed to be locked away, medicated into oblivion, forgotten?" I pulled my arm free. I was, for 11 years. But here's the thing about cages. Eventually, someone leaves the door open. "Yelena, you don't understand what you're doing. You're not well. You need help." "Stop. Just stop." I opened my folder and pulled out documents. I have copies of the falsified medical reports. I have testimony from staff who witnessed the fraud. I have evidence of your embezzlement from grandmother's trust. I have proof that you've been selling counterfeit wines for the past 7 years. I have everything. The color drained from his face. You can't prove any of that. I already have. There are federal investigators upstairs right now, waiting for my signal. One word from me and your entire world collapses. The cellar door opened. Lorraine stood there, and for the first time, I saw her without the mask. No fake tears, no concerned stepmother act, just cold calculation. Vincent, you idiot. I told you we should have kept her medicated indefinitely. She looked at me. You really think you've won, don't you? Lorraine, shut up, my father started, but she talked over him. Do you want to know the truth, Yelena? Your father didn't plan this. I did. All of it. I poisoned your mother slowly, carefully, so it looked like cancer. I seduced your father while she was dying. I convinced him you were a threat to his legacy. I found the doctors, paid off the staff, forged the documents. Vincent was just a tool, a youthful, greedy, weak tool. My father staggered backward. What? Margaret's cancer? You said she was already sick when we... She was healthy as a horse until I started adding arsenic to her morning tea. Lorraine smiled. You really thought a woman like me would want you for love? I wanted the vineyard, I wanted the money, and I needed you to eliminate the only person who could stop me, your brilliant, beloved daughter. The cellar door opened wider. My grandmother Catherine stood there in her wheelchair, her attorney Robert Greene beside her. Behind them, 2 federal agents. Catherine looked at her son with such profound disappointment that even I felt it. Vincent, I gave you every chance to tell me the truth. For 11 years I waited for you to confess, to show even a shred of remorse. Mother, I've known for 6 months, since Robert started investigating on Elena's behalf, since we discovered what you'd done. I wanted to believe you'd been manipulated, that you'd regret it. But you don't, do you? You're only sorry you got caught. The agents moved forward. They arrested Lorraine first. She didn't even fight, just kept smiling that cold smile. Then they turned to my father. He looked at me one last time. I loved you, he whispered. I met his eyes. Not enough. They led him away. The gala upstairs continued, oblivious to the drama unfolding in the cellar. Catherine reached for my hand. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I should have protected you. You didn't know. I should have known. A grandmother should always know. Tears streamed down her weathered face. Can you forgive me? I knelt beside her wheelchair. Some betrayals are invisible. You couldn't have seen it, but you believed me when it mattered. That's enough. 6 months later, I stood in that same vineyard at sunset, watching the vines turn gold in the dying light. The estate was mine now, legally transferred through the family trust. I'd fired every person who'd been complicit in my father's fraud. I'd restored our reputation with honest business practices and legitimate vintages. The Moretti name meant something again. Damien found me there, my half-brother who'd been just as much a pawn as me. He'd never known what his mother had done. When he learned the truth, he'd visited me and apologized for existing. Can we start over? He asked now. As siblings. I looked at him, really looked at him. He had my father's eyes, but not his coldness. He'd been raised by a monster and somehow remained kind. I'd like that, I said. We walked to the cellar together, and I pulled out a bottle I'd been saving, my mother's vintage, from the year she died, the one truth my father had never been able to corrupt. I poured 2 glasses, and we drank to new beginnings. The father who betrayed me never expected my return, but betrayal has a way of coming full circle. They took 11 years of my life, but they gave me something too, clarity. I learned that revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's about reclaiming what was stolen. Sometimes it's about standing in your truth while the lies burn down around you. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe because karma always finds its way home. Comment below, have you ever had to choose between revenge and redemption? I'd love to hear your story. And remember, time reveals everything. Wine isn't the only thing that gets better with age. So does justice. Some betrayals age like wine. They get stronger with time, but so do the people who survive them. And that, in the end, is the sweetest revenge of all.